This is a recording for the CUPHAT project, Coastal Uplands, Heritage and Tourism. My name is Daniel Carey. Today is the 15th of August 2023 and I have with me here David Moran for part two of our chat. Thank you, David. Can you confirm for the recorder that you're happy to take part in this project?
Yes, Daniel, I'm happy to take part in this project.
Thanks a million. I thought we might start just by going back maybe to your early life. What are your memories of school?
Yeah, well, basically went to national school, and we went to a very country orientated school. It was in Moneystown National School. So the location is sort of halfway between Rathdrum and Roundwood, and it was a very small school. When I first started there was only 7 in my class, and I think in the whole school, including ourselves, there was 20 in the whole school. And it was a case of, I think, just from what I've been told, that they were trying to get kids from different areas to attend the school, because if they didn't, the school would have closed down at that time. And it used to be in a real old building, and then it moved into a 2-classroom school, and that's where I started. And like, it was the only heating in the place was a coal or a stove at the top of the room, and we used to have to go out and bring in the coal for that. That was part of our daily chores with the school. So I went to Moneystown. That's where I started school. It was a lovely little school. There was only one teacher when I started up there, a guy by the name of Mr. McGillick, or Frank McGillick, and that's where we started. We progressed from baby infants up to 6th class, and then after 6th class, then I was into secondary school. And then I decided to go into secondary school in Rathdrum for the first 3 years, and that was sort of the school there was, as we say, it was close to Jacob's Well. It was in the car park at Jacob's Well, and it was a really old school. But then after my intercert, or junior cert in today's terms, I changed school and I went to the Brothers in the De La Salle in Wicklow. And there was no main reason. I just liked to change. My younger brother was going there as well, so I decided to go in along as well. So that's where I did my leaving cert, and unfortunately the De La Salle is closed down since, and fortunately Moneystown has kept going to today, and my kids are attending in Moneystown now again, so it's like history repeating itself. And that school has blossomed in Moneystown unbelievably. That there's, I think, over 130 kids in there every year now, from junior infants up to 6th class, which is great to see. So then going back after secondary school, I decided to go to college, and I spent a few years down in Carlow IT. And I was doing construction engineering down there. So that was basically my education up to that point. Then I got into the hurley making, and from 95 I've been here ever since. So that's where I am now.
Very good. I thought we might just touch kind of briefly on the idea of kind of place and place identity. If you met someone in, I don't know, in Killarney or Galway, and they asked where are you from, what do you say to that question?
Well, I suppose straightforward, you'd be saying you'd be from Wicklow, and then I suppose you'd be trying to identify in a sports sense. And I suppose if anybody's not sure of it geographically, you would probably say you're about 10 to 15 minutes from Glendalough, or, as we probably mentioned before, Charles Stewart Parnell's estate and his forestry estate is just only out the road. So that's how we identify where we're from. We also people identify it as a beautiful county once you mention Wicklow, and the scenery and the mountains and the coastline as well, which we're on the coastline. So Wicklow is known for its beauty. It has gathered, or been known as, the Garden of Ireland. So, and it's very true, and any time you identify you're from Wicklow, everybody identifies it as the Garden of Ireland. Not very successful in the sporting sense on a major scale, but we have a lot of individual people that be very popular sports stars, you know, like you've got Katie Taylor from the box, and there's a McGettigan girl, she represented Ireland at athletics, you know. So there's a lot of individuals from County Wicklow that have excelled at international level as well.
Yeah. Maybe kind of slightly leading on from that question, just kind of wanted to touch on the idea of cultural heritage and natural heritage, maybe to get your sort of understanding of what you kind of understand those terms to mean, and maybe touch briefly on what the most important aspects of local cultural heritage and natural heritage would be. What are the things that you kind of most value in those terms?
Well, I suppose cultural, it's very much, we've got Glendalough right beside us here, and the history that's with Glendalough, with St. Kevin and finding Glendalough and the monks living there, and then the Round Tower and the churches and religion being very strong in Glendalough. And I suppose it's a lot of people go there and find it very spiritual. So I suppose like Wicklow would be a spiritual place if you wanted to find that peace and quiet. Like our mountains as well, from a cultural point of view, is very scenic. We have a lot of places where you can just, I won't say get lost, but you can go into the wilderness, and you've got the Wicklow Way that travels from South Wicklow all the way to North Wicklow into the Dublin Mountains. So that from that cultural point of view. Then also there's certain pockets of area in Wicklow that would be very musical, like just a couple off the top of my head, like Hollywood and West Wicklow. There'd be a lot of traditional music out there. Even when I was in Moneystown National School, not that I played traditional music, but there was a lot of the kids came from families where music was very important to them, and traditional music was part of it. And I have to say, in fairness to our teacher in Moneystown, Mr. McGillick, he emphasised like Irish, and he tried to get us to go to Irish competitions and speak the language. And now I know we don't speak it on an everyday basis, but at home I try to converse with my kids a little bit, and it would be very broken Irish, but at least we're trying to keep that part of the language alive. Then I suppose we've got our sporting culture here as well. Like we've got our GAA, we've got soccer, rugby within the county. Even some of our rugby players that are going to play in the World Cup this year, there's some of them coming from Wicklow, you know, so which is great to see. So it's we've got multicultural, you know, areas that we that are involved. So we've got our history, we've got our music, we've got our sporting contents, and then also our scenic, cultural, and I suppose also we've got history, which is very important here. Like even Glenmalure, which is about 10 to 15 minutes out from Rathdrum as well. It's a lot of history up there, going back to the troubled times and the military barracks up there, and even Daniel O'Connell, I think, might have. There's definitely parts of that he's hid out in Glenmalure, should I say? You know. So
tell me about Glenmalure. Just kind of describe what it's like, because it's a very unusual place. I suppose it's kind of a unique place.
It is, and going back to our schooling days, it was part of our geography. It was very unique, as it was formed by glaciers from the Ice Age, and is very much a V valley shape. It's very mountainous and it's very rugged. It's part of the Wicklow Way. It's very much a beautiful scenic area. It's one of those places if you want to you can go for a walk, and you mightn't meet anybody for the whole day, and you can just meander along the tracks and the woods and the different paths, which is a huge advantage for people. And the people up there, it's very the local people up there, there's a lot of history with their families as well, that go back a long time, and that's been part of Glenmalure for a long time. I wouldn't know a lot of the history. I know the Burns and O'Burns, it would be very strong up in Glenmalure, that namesake, and that name is very much part of the Wicklow history. Like the name is very much part of Wicklow. So yeah, Glenmalure, and there's a river flows down through it, and it's part of the Avonmore as well, that forms and runs down into Arklow. There's a little pub up there. There's an estate up there as well. It'd be very much a place where people go hunting and shooting. Say, part of the estate is there's deer shooting on it, there's grouse shooting on it, and pheasant shooting. So it bring in a lot of tourism from Ireland and abroad, because it's a popular place for shooting and that sporting side of things as well. And it's just a nice area.
Have you a favourite archaeological site in the area?
Oh, good question. I suppose the first archaeological site, there's obviously enough Glendalough, everybody knows, but in Moneystown there's a small dolmen right beside the school. Now it was sort of I laugh because it was sort of our school tour one year. It's only about a minute's walk away from the school, so we went up to see that, and we walked around it. So that was that, and also I think it's what did they call it? A giant's grave. Did you ever hear of
No, what's a giant's grave?
There was two of them. I remember being told as kids, beside the school where this dolmen is, or this stone, there's it's just a mound that's just in the middle of a field, and we were told it was always because there was a stone at the end of this mound, it looked like a giant's grave, and it was a case of that. I don't know if there was ever anything in it, but people never touched them. And I remember there was another one probably when we were where I live when we were kids, just up the road from it, up in it's just on Carrickhill, and it was part of a farm, and we were told there was a giant's grave there as well, and there was another mound with another stone on the at the head. And as kids, we were fascinated by that, because your imagination runs wild of what could be in it. Was there an actual giant, or was it a place where stuff was buried, equipment, or was it part of a little village? So like those two stick out straight away. So I suppose like that they would have been the first archaeological things that would have of interest that you would have discovered, and you would have gone investigating and trying to, as kids, just trying to your imagination going wild, and also trying to see, did you go and dig in them, or would you be allowed to? And then people would tell you that you're not allowed to do that. So then that would be and then I suppose then you're looking at the Glendalough then after that.
Sure, yeah. You mentioned, actually, just in relation to the school, you mentioned that it was a one teacher school when you were there, when you started. So one teacher oversaw all classes from infants right up to sixth class. Was that the way
correct?
It worked?
Yeah. When I first went in, there was everybody was in the one room, and there was 20 or 22 kids in the whole class, in the whole school, and then there was everybody was in the one room, and there was only one teacher, and he used to BBC World Radio. He used to get us all into one, or when we were all in the one room, he used to use that as well for history lessons or finding out, discovering stuff, and that was part of our weekly. That he used to get this out, real old radio, and there wasn't low ceilings, it was the real old high ceilings in the classroom, and he used to attach the radio to an aerial that led outside to try and get these signals. So sometimes you might get them, sometimes you wouldn't, depending on the weather. So and then it evolved. I remember I had him from junior infants all the way to 6th class, except for 1 year. There was a teacher came in called Miss Hennessy, and she was, I think I had her for 1st class because she did the Holy Communion with us. Yeah, that was the only time that I didn't have Mr. McGillick. And then after that there was another teacher came then called Miss Tierney. So by the time I left from junior infants up to 6th class, there was 3 teachers had been introduced, or
Okay.
two more teachers had come into the school.
Okay. You mentioned that your own children go to the school now. Is it the same building or a different building?
Yeah, well, over the last, it's amazing. Like it's been built on, and just recently they're after having an extension on it, where they call it the Bluebell Room, and it's for kids that need additional help in school, which has been brilliant because it's allowing kids that need, I'm not sure the exact word, but additional help with learning, that they're being facilitated within the normal environment of school life, which is great. And also what's brilliant about it as well, Daniel, is that I even see with my own kids that there's 1 or 2 kids in their classroom that need extra help and S&N teachers helping them, but it's normal for the kids, that is part of their everyday life, that there is there's other kids, not everybody's the same.
Sure, yeah, but it's treated as a kind of a normal part of school life
exactly
for everybody.
Yeah, and it's normal for them, but it's also normal for everybody in the classroom, which is brilliant to see. And this Bluebell Room, it was only opened here recently by Minister Simon Harris, and obviously enough with his brother, he needed help during school as well, so he was absolutely delighted to see it. But yeah, it has evolved and it's been built on, and it's funny when I went in to see the school, the development in it, there's still the structure of the 2 old classrooms that when I was there are still there. It has changed a little bit in regards to structural wise, but as I was able to explain to my sons, or my older son anyway, that used to be my old classroom, and that's still there, which is great to see.
Okay. Maybe a couple of kind of reflections before we finish. What's the best thing about living here?
The best thing I enjoy is just the freedom of living in the countryside. I know it's not for everybody. For me personally, that's the best thing I love about having. We live in the country. We're not too far from the town. The town is developing, which is great to see. We're not far from Dublin either. We've got a rail service beside us here. So we've the best of both worlds, if we've, as I mentioned before, we've got all our mountains, history, Glendalough beside us, but also development is happening. And we've got our schools here. They're all huge advantages that we don't have to travel too far for them. It's a good environment. It's also, we're on the east coast, which helps a little bit. We mightn't get as much wet weather as the west coast, but this summer has been slightly different. Has changed that a little bit, but look, it's just when myself and my wife were talking about where we wanted to live and where we wanted to bring up kids, we sort of said that it's a good area, and there's a lot of people that we know here, and that's coming back now as well, because all kids, when I was a kid, all the kids I was mixing with, they're all like, they have their kids, and then it's just only this same happening again, that those kids are their fathers, and our kids are their kids are starting to mix with our kids now, you know, so it's all history repeating itself.
Yeah. What challenges does the area face?
I suppose obviously straight away is infrastructure. There's a lot of houses after being built in Rathdrum, and personally I don't think the infrastructure has been put in. It's a case of just building and not thinking about what has to be done to help develop the area. Okay, we're putting in houses, but it's more than houses needs to be put in. Just only like from my own thinking on it, that Rathdrum has probably missed the boom times, but now the boom is hitting Rathdrum now, and development is a lot of houses. So I think there's lots of 400 or 500 houses being built in Rathdrum, but the streets are still the same. The infrastructure for going to these houses was never put in. Also, a big thing is that they have all these areas where the houses are, but they should have probably consulted with the local sports clubs and asked, was there anything that could be put in the middle of these areas to have kids to, you know, that instead of them, it's just to try and have an area there for kids to be able to go and play in, and then clubs from the area can go into that development in regards of, and what I mean is a pitch development, that's maybe a running track, a basketball court, a skateboard park, things for kids to do within their own little area, that parents know that they're going to be safe there, that they're not too far away, and that they can, like when we were kids we were able to go and run around the fields, but today's terms kids are not able to do that anymore, and it's just not safe environment either, because it's just what's happened over the years. So yeah, things like that should really happen, you know, in regards of trying to infrastructure should, I think infrastructure, yeah, it's not the proper or there should be more infrastructure put in regards of for children, for kids and young adults.
Yeah. Your workshop is just around the corner from the fire station, and I know you're involved in the fire service as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically the fire service, I'm 6 year in it now. It's a very demanding role, because you're on call 24/7, basically 11 months of the year, 11 and a half months of the year. You're basically, how the fire service for the retained fire service works is that we're given a pager after our training, and that basically sits on your hip the whole time. It's attached to your belt, so no matter, you're always in call with it, as I say, morning, noon, night, and you as soon as that goes off, you have to drop everything, and whatever you're doing, you have to just go straight to the station, and then get into the appliance, and then go to whatever the incident is you have to attend.
And I know the fire service has been in the news this summer because there's an industrial dispute. Just tell me a little bit about what's going on there, and what people are seeking, I suppose.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, basically what the retained firefighters are looking for is that it's a very demanding job, and we're paid a retainer every year, and the remuneration for that isn't great, for the amount of hours, like for being on call the whole time. So we're trying to get a better pay package and pay deal and pension, and And also we're trying to get a better work-life balance, because the fire service is a very you have to be very selfish in regards of once your people goes off. Like if you're with family or friends or that, and it doesn't matter if you're with the kids, you just have to leave because there's somebody after ringing 999 and they're in a situation that they need our help straight away. And unfortunately, if we're playing with the kids or we're having dinner or the middle of the night or we're reading a bedtime story to our kids, we just have to go. So it's what we're trying to do as well, is we're trying to get a little bit better quality of life for the firefighter. But also there's a problem there, Daniel, that the retention in the fire service is huge. Is that there's a lot of people dropping away from the fire service. You have to live within 2.5 kilometres of the fire station or within 5 minutes. You can't be any more. We have to be at the station within 5 minutes and ready to roll to go out to the incident. So it's a lot of stations around the country are finding it really hard for people to apply for the job. Because you're very restricted. I'm fortunate from the point of view of that as you've mentioned, my workshop is right opposite the fire station and I can just shut the door. But that has its drawbacks as well, because like if I have customers maybe coming, I have to try and either leave hurls in one of the businesses beside me or leave them in my car, and hopefully they're happy to pick them out. But I just have to go, and they could be travelling up to an hour or 2 hours away just to come and get that. Now, in fairness to them, they're all very good. They're very understanding and they understand what you have to do. But for me as an individual, it's hard. It's hard that you're letting down your customer, but at the same time you're going to help somebody that's in their hours need as well, you know. So it's that real balancing act, and that's where we're looking for a little bit better quality life and a little bit more structured time off for the firefighter, because we do, as everybody knows, we do go to incidents that are fairly traumatic, and it's a case of sometimes you need downtime. But we could be dealing with a very serious incident and we come back and you don't have that time to sort of think about it, because you're back in call again. You might have to go straight back out again, or you're going home to my wife and 2 kids, to 2 boys, and you have to be happy, or, you know, especially with your kids, you can talk to your partner about it, but the kids, you have to be straight away happy, and all they want to do is play with you or chat with you, and trying to get that balance that you, when you do go home to that home environment, that you don't bring it home with you as well.
Because I imagine like it must have a huge impact on family life, because you always need a plan B in a sense. There has to be someone, you know, your wife or extended family or someone has to be available if you get the call.
Yeah, 100%, Daniel. Like that, like you wouldn't be able to do this fire service without the support, 100% support of your wife or your family, you know, or your partner, because it's like if my wife has to go shopping, and this is the side that people don't know about, is that if my wife can't leave my kids with me without her staying there, because, or having a backup plan that I have somebody close by that I can drop the kids there, because as I said earlier, you've only 5 minutes to get to the station. Like you're on a 999 call, you have to respond to that. And you just have to have everything prepared in advance, and that's very stressful as well. And it's not for yourself, but it's just for your partner and the kids, because sometimes your wife or your partner wants to go out and she has her friends to go and see, and then she has to arrange with some of the family then to look after your kids if she wants to go out. So like that's, even though people never they wouldn't know that side of it really, and that's why I say it's a very selfish thing to do, that you're going to help somebody, but it's the factor behind that scenes that when you leave, you have to make sure that your kids are safe and that your wife is there, or you've got somebody there to make sure the kids are safe, because they're priority at the end of the day, you know. But you have to have all that thought about, you're the whole time thinking ahead.
You mentioned it's kind of an 11-month or 11.5-month sort of job. The in terms of kind of structured time off, what's available, or like is there if you plan far enough in advance, can you say, you know, like I don't know, holidays abroad or that kind of thing? Like how does that work?
Yeah, well that way, like, you're able to plan ahead, like, and you're able to get your holidays. But I suppose it's like any job, we have to have you know, when you're planning your holidays, we have to plan well in advance, because it's a case of there's 9 in the station and the minimum crew that we need is five people going out to any incident. So we have a holiday planner at the beginning of the year, and we have to plan ahead. And even like if, like, for the weekend, you have to plan well in advance as well. Like even for a day, you have to see if we have enough of crew around, and if we don't have enough of crew around, and if you haven't booked your time off well in advance, you're sort of left that you have to try and arrange it for another time. And that always doesn't suit, because there might be something on the kid's birthday party or something else is happening, you know. So yeah, very much we have to always be, and it's like all our part, the whole fire service, we always have to be planning ahead. We always have to, for that second that your buzzer goes off. So your whole life is unfortunately and fortunately, because it is a very rewarding thing, because it was always something that I was interested in doing, was helping other people. But it is defined by that pager or buzzer on your belt, and as soon as that clicks in, then you're into a different mode altogether, and it's just only go and deal with the situation that you have in front of you. And that's the one thing about excuse me, the fire service, is you don't know what you're going to. Like
what sort of range of kind of incidents would you deal with, or what kind of a spectrum are we talking about here?
Well, you're dealing with everything. Like you're dealing with from maybe a cat in the tree situation to somebody's house flooding, and then to the extremes as car accidents, house fires, also chemical incidents, and like when we mention house fires and RTCs or RTAs, road traffic accidents, like you don't know what you're expecting when you go to those situations, especially when you have persons reported, and generally persons reported mean that they're trapped in the car, or in it's life and death situation then to try and get them out of the car. And unfortunately with road accidents there's also fatalities, which is part of the job as well. So that's the extreme part of being in the fire service, you know, and that's the downside. As even when you're trying to save people's lives, you know what I mean, like, and that's the other side of it as well, that we're all advanced paramedics to deal with even ambulance assists, because of the situation of the ambulances within the country. We can be called to heart attacks and strokes and incidents like that, and life-saving situation where an ambulance isn't available, and we be the closest first responders to it. And also we work hand in hand with the care doc in those situations, but it's that be part of our role as well. no matter what you're doing or what you're working at or whatever you're in the middle at that moment when your buzzer goes off, it's obsolete. Like, it don't
Just doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. Yeah, because it's hard to describe, because until you've seen those bad incidents and horrific incidents and you've experienced it, nothing really, everything is sort of in a different light. Like, you think differently, and even like it being like probably does change you in a way, because it is a case of like you have to, you're dealing with a situation, and unfortunately, like, if the person is in, it's a fatality, you have to I won't say harden to it, because you never get hardened. You have to be able to deal with it in your own way, and as some people say, you either laugh or you cry about it, and it's sort of, we do have to sort of build up a bit of a toughness to it.
There's a job to be done in the moment when it happens.
Yeah. Like, when we're dealing with the situation, we're sort of trying to save that person's life, or unfortunately it's a recovery situation, and in those, like, it's funny when you're trying to save somebody's life. It's a totally different atmosphere. Like, you're in that adrenaline. And it's funny, like, when people say to do things, like, we'd have all the equipment, but it's just your adrenaline takes over. But when it's, unfortunately, when it's a fatality, it's a somber thing. Like, it's a totally different atmosphere. When life saving, you're fully 100% focused on the person, and unfortunately, when it's fatality, it's about recovering, and everything's a little bit slower, and respect for the person, and making sure that, and sometimes family are on the scene as well. And that's another thing that you have to try and deal with. Not try and deal with, but just you have to have that comfort and side to your demeanour as well, so, like, it is real. As I say, you go from highs to lows on it very quickly.
As I understand it, part of the kind of industrial action has been a kind of a rolling series where certain stations kind of stand down on certain days. So your area expands presumably on days where a neighbouring station is not active. Is that kind of how things have worked this summer?
Yeah, very true. Like, it's the way it's working is that it's on a 50% on-off basis, and say Wicklow has 10 stations. So it's a case of there'll be 5 stations on and 5 stations off. Now, that's going to escalate in regards of up to recently. There's been no negotiations. The unions haven't been able to get anywhere with government side of things, and it's escalating. That it'll be 60% of the stations that'll be off and 40% will be on. So that means from this coming Saturday there'll be 6 stations off and 4 stations on. So that's going to have a real effect, because the East Coast being one of the highly population being huge along the East Coast, the density of it stretches from Bray down to Archaeological. So if we've only 4 stations on in the whole of Wicklow, like, you're talking a huge area to cover. And also we have the geographical thing of the mountains dividing Wicklow. So you've got west and east Wicklow. So it'll be a case of there'll be 4 stations. So, like, if you think about the biggest population outside of Dublin at the minute, part of it will be Bray and Greystones and spreading down into Wicklow and Archaeological as well. And where we're geographical in Rathdrum, we're sort of nearly in the centre of the county. We're the closest to the west side of the county, but we're also we're based practically nearly in the centre of Wicklow. So our area covers from up to Tinnahealy, which is sort of southwest, over to Dunlavin, up along the Wicklow Gap, up along the Sally Gap, then down into Ashford, into Wicklow, down into Arklow, and then stretching back then to Aughrim, and stretching to Aughrim, then up to sort of Ockavana, and coming back then around then again. So we've a huge area to cover. Now we haven't got a huge population the further inland around the mountainous areas, but we do a lot back up, say, to Wicklow town, and so it'll be hopefully things will be resolved soon. But everybody we're trying to look, as I've said earlier, for better payment and better life structure, and because it is a case of, I think it's working out about €1 an hour that we're getting paid, so for to be part of that retainer, so that's we're hoping that they did give an increase, but it was nearly an insult when you're starting on a low base. And they offered 24 to 33%, I think. So going from €1 to 123 up to 133. It sounds like a lot when you put it in percentage wise. If they're on the average industrial wage, if you were saying you're getting 25% of a bonus or an increase, it'd be happy days. But unfortunately for us, it doesn't work that way. So at the minute, we're at 50% reduction. From next Saturday it'll go to 60%, and the following Saturday it'll go to 75% of the stations will be closed within Wicklow, and that's for nationwide as well. It's not just Wicklow, it's all over the country.
Okay. Do you have a particular job at an incident, or does everybody kind of do everything? How do you kind of work as a team on an incident?
Well, basically the way it works, when we're going to an incident, we have a bit of knowledge beforehand of what's happened. So we have a driver who drives the main appliance, and generally in the main appliance we have a crew of 6. And then we have, our structure is, we have a station officer and a substation officer. While we're going to the incident, depending on what type of the incident it is, so if it's a car crash, we generally have 4 in the back, and we divide a team. So it'd be 2 teams of 2. So there'll be the medical side, so there'll be 2. There'll be one main person to be the lead medic, and then there'd be the assistant medic to that, and then the other 2 guys, they'd be getting cutting equipment ready for whatever the situation requires. So they're getting all that equipment ready. So that's basically how, when we're going to an emergency in regards of a road incident, if it's a house fire, we have a BA team. And so what happens is we have a BA team that consists of 2 BA breathing apparatus wearers, and that's decided. We usually decide that amongst ourselves, or the substation officers are usually in the front, and he says, right, we want X and Y is on the BA sets, and then the other 2 guys, they're responsible for, if we're in a town, they're responsible for setting up the hydrants and getting water for the main appliance to pump the water into so that the 2 guys in the BA wearers can attack the fire. So like we have runners and riders, as we call it. So the BA team would be attacking, and then we'd have the runners, and they'd be the team that would be getting water for us. So every incident's different. So we're all the time and that adjusts very quickly. Like you could be given information that it's a 1-car incident, and all of a sudden when you turn up it could be a 2-car incident. It all depends on the information that's been relayed to us. It's the same with a house. Like you go to a house fire, and it could be a shed out at the back of the house on fire, and it could be beside a kerosene tank, and that could be full up. So your situation is totally changing the whole time. And then it's the same in the medical side of thing. You could be told there's nobody injured, and then all of a sudden you could be dealing with 2 casualties there, and like whatever you have to deal is in regards of if there are cuts, bruises, broken limbs, cardiac arrest, whatever it is. So all those things are everything. You'd be told one, your information be given one, but then it could change totally as soon as you get there, and everything just flips on its head. But you have to adjust to that quickly, and that's where, in fairness, we're all trained to that level, and we're all trained as medics, and we're all trained as BA wearers, and that allows us then we can adjust and we can do what needs to be done.
How often would you get called out, or does that vary hugely from kind of time of year or year to year? Or
it depends, Daniel. Like we be sort of say, just give you a little bit of background to the other stations. Say you've got the high volume calls, the middle volume calls, and then the low volume calls. So like say wherever the bigger populations are, you're going to always have a naturally higher volume of calls, 999 calls to those areas. So like say the likes of Bray, Greystones, Wicklow and Archaeological, they'd be, you're probably talking 250, 300 calls plus a year. We'd probably be in the next bracket where we'd average anything between say 100 to 150 calls a year. And then you've got the smaller stations, or excuse me, the quieter stations, and they could be averaging around 50, 60 calls a year. So it all depends. So it all depends, as I say, to your population within an area, and also another thing that we'd get a high volume of is mountain fires. Like as we say, we're right at the foot of the Wicklow Hills. We're right beside the Wicklow Gap, the Sally Gap, Glenmalure, and we call to those fires, and basically we have to that's another thing, that we mountain fires, like, which means a bit of hill walking, which can be, if you're chasing fires up a mountain and there's a wind blowing, can be what would you say, you need to have your fitness levels up. But in those situations now as well, the OPW does call in helicopters for the help assist in those situations to put out the fires. So, and that, which is a great help, because sometimes these fires, like if it gets into woodland, you wouldn't be able to control it because it goes straight up into the trees, and if you have trees 34 or 30, 20, 30, 40 foot tall, it just, the wind just pushes it straight through, and that's where you need the helicopters to help you. I suppose 2000, now I was training when this was happening, but in 2017 we had all the east coast, like down in Wicklow, there was a lot of mountain fires, and you had them down in Kerry as well, and mountainous areas. So there was, talking to the guys that were on that, they were saying they were out the whole time. Didn't matter, you were out morning, noon and night, and they were trying to save properties, you know, which was and unfortunately, if they're not able, they do their best to save the property, but if it gets out of control, you just have to unfortunately let the property burn, which, making sure that everybody's out of the house and that it's safe as well, you know. So yeah, so they're all, that'd be sort of our call range. Yeah, we be a busy little station depending on what's happening. Doesn't matter what time of the year, Daniel, as I say, the buzzer can go off any time, and anything could happen. Okay, we sort of have our hill fire season, and then car accidents can be any time of the year, you know. So that, yeah.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to touch on before we finish, David?
No, not off the top of my head. Like, as I say, as in regards to the fire service, it's just something that you have to be dedicated to it, and you have to have the support of your family to do it, and only for that you wouldn't be able to do it. And it's something that I enjoy, but I'm only able to enjoy it because of what my wife Nicola and 2 sons they support, you know, even though the sons be given out to me at times and asking can I get time off for this and that, you know, you'd be always trying to have that family time. But yeah, no, it is rewarding. It's a very rewarding job, and but you do have to be very single-minded to be able to just drop everything and go. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great, David. Thanks a million. I'll stop the recording now.